in order to get to the place that you want to be, you have to lose the friends that you had. And there's going to be this little in-between where you're by yourself, where you don't have the friends from before and you haven't gotten good enough to get to the friends that you want. And so you get that little social isolation. But once you get to that new place, you look back and you realize that you're more comfortable being someone that you are rather than someone that you're not.
I'm finding myself being a mentor now to a young man who's the son of one of my brown belt students in the program at XCAL. And I was just at his high school wrestling tournament on Friday. And I showed up late to the event, and we're getting updates on the drive in. And, we had to drive through the metropolitan DC area to get to this event. And there's snow, and it's a Friday.
And it's DC.
So we were a bit late to the event. We missed his first two matches. And the way it was explained to us, his first match was a well-fought match, but he lost on points eventually and then turned into a pin. But he wrestled well. And then his next match, he was in on an attack on a single leg takedown and then just got reversed and pinned. Sometimes it'd be like that, right? And so he's pretty dejected. We get there. I have a heart-to-heart with him. And next thing you know, he comes out and he does a tech fall. Now, even for those that might not know a lot about wrestling at the collegiate level or collegiate style wrestling, a tech fall victory is when you score more than 15 points over your adversary. And so they just stop the match. They're like, there's no reason to keep going. You got way too many points. Let's just call it. And it's kind of like the mercy rule, right? Well, he's up 16-0 on this guy. And now he does that. The next team comes out because it's a dual meet, and the next team comes out. They just saw that this kid tech faulted his last opponent. So they decide to not put the wrestler for his weight class in his weight class, and they decide to move him up a weight class, thinking he'll have a better chance against the heavier person. That's a win. You scared them away to the point where you still get to get your hand raised on the mat as a forfeit. He wasn't happy that he got his hand raised in the forfeit. And I said, you should be happier about that forfeit than you should your tech fall, because that means you own them mentally. You got in their coaches' heads to the point where they're like, nope, don't want to deal with that. And we'll talk about that in a second, which is like the rattlesnake effect. But the idea of it was he had lost twice, came out, changed one little thing, and just became a force of nature. And then he destroys this one guy, goes on, gets a forfeiture. So now he's mad over the forfeiture. I have to mentally steer him back into the mindset of, no, that's a good thing, and get him back to focusing on his last match of the day. So I said, well, you have one more match. You're technically on paper 2-2 for the day. Do you want to end 2-3? That's an easy answer. Nobody wants to lose. So I said, how do you make sure that there's no ifs, ands, or buts in your last match that you win? Well, there's only one way to emphatically win in wrestling, and that's with a pin. I gave our guy the go-ahead, and I was like, hey, you should do this. And he goes out and he hits a lateral drop, gets another takedown, pins the guy right off the lateral drop, and wins. And so it's like, man, you started off the day 0-2. You ended the day 3-2. Way more impressive. And your two real true victories were a tech fall, first of his career, and a really amazing pin. And the best part is you went unscored on the rest of the day. So you went from hard-fought match, mistake, tech fall, forfeiture, lateral drop to pin. You only went up. How can you do that if you have a weak will? And when I tell people about my desire to get into jiu-jitsu as being super low, I hated this endeavor. I thought it was something that was kind of equivalent to eating your vegetables as a small child. I wanted to do MMA professionally, and it was kind of like, okay, you hit pads, you sparred, go do your jiu-jitsu. Okay. Like I didn't want to do the grappling. The grappling for me was like, nah, it's okay. I want to hit things. I was predominantly a martial artist who did striking martial arts. So when it came time for me to do jiu-jitsu, it's like, I don't want to do jiu-jitsu. But it was a mindset thing of, this is a part of the fighting. You have to do this. Well, more than just have to do this, you want to do well. And so even if you don't have the skill for a thing, you should still have the will. And in my early days, like I said, I lost a lot of my matches in the beginning. And then what was the big change? I developed some skills. The desire to do well was already there. It's not like my opponents were breaking me down mentally and then I was quitting. They were just physically better. They knew enough. Once the skill acquisition was there and I picked up the things that I was missing, I had the will to win. Now I also had the skill. Man, it was a dangerous recipe. To explain to my student who is wrestling that you have the skill to win. Where's your will to win? And here's the thing. When you go out there and you look that person in their eyes, let them know through your body language that you're looking through them and they are just an obstacle to you, because you will break them mentally and then the fight becomes easy. And that goes into one of the other bullet points we'll talk about, which is that winning the mental fight. How do I teach mental toughness at our academy? And it starts by showing people they're tougher than they think they are by putting them in bad positions and showing them how deep they can fight. Get comfortable breathing underwater through a coffee straw. When you can slow your heart rate down and you can get to that point where this is fine, as you're in like S mount, hands crossed over your head, pinched together, they're sitting on your chest and you're like, this is great, right? Like when you get to that level, you have put one deposit into the bank of yourself and you're investing in your mental toughness just by being in that position one time. Do it 100 times. Do it tens of thousands of times. Get to the point where it's just like, thank you for the S mount stretch. My shoulders needed that. One of the most vicious things you can say to somebody in jiu-jitsu right after you grapple them is thanks for the rest round. Now, I'm not saying this so that you just have this crippling statement to make to somebody willingly.
Come on.
I'm not saying that just use it whenever. Sparingly use it, because it is the worst thing you could say. It's the worst thing you could say. So when would you say it? Let's say you get some goon who's like maybe a belt rank higher than you, who's looking at you as just a tool to sharpen their game against. You have to remind yourself that you are nobody's stepping stone, even as a new practitioner. Your job is to survive and irritate as a brand new person, right? Like learn as much as you can, but don't think that you have much hope of winning. A broken clock is right twice a day, and sometimes you might just get a good move. Great, happens. I'm not going to think of it as anything other than that. You shouldn't think of it as anything other than that. But your goals are make it to the end of every round with as few submissions just given out as possible. Don't just give up. Build that mental toughness. And then when you have that person who thinks that they're using you to grow themselves, don't let them. Allow yourself a little modicum of respect and say, you have to earn those things. And by being a little bit harder to submit every single time, you're gaining skills defensively on what you should be doing. But you're also telling yourself, I lasted way longer on this than my first time being in this. And you start going back to every time you've ever extended on a reach from mount and given up the armbar. And now it's like, armbar me now, right? With your elbows in. It's a great feeling when you start to figure it out and you say, every one of those small L's turned into a greater W later. And I think those breadcrumbs of those small defeats leading you to the promised land of total victory are a necessary step along the road. But the bigger problem is most, and I'm specifically targeting men when I say this, but most adults can't handle that because that shock to their ego is too great and they leave. Now, I know we're going to talk about the barrier to entry being fear, and I don't mind going into that now, but the point I'm trying to make is like it can come back to people in weird ways. Some people, they won't go into that room because they're afraid of looking bad, or they're afraid they're getting hurt, or they're afraid of, they're going to find out they're not as tough as they think they are. Some version of that. Other people, they just don't want to go in because they know that they have the kind of personality where they don't have the sense of control and they don't want to lose that control. Great. That's the kind of person that we were glad they don't come in. Everybody else, that's fine. We can work with them and we can get them on target. But when somebody has this idea that they're going to learn a skill and that they're going to immediately be able to put it in their back pocket and use it, that's a flawed strategy, because nothing that we learn in that sense comes easy. It would be like trying to learn how to swim by reading a book and then jumping in the pool second. You have intelligence, but not knowledge, because knowledge comes from doing. And so once people do a thing and they get whatever results from that, they make their next assumption. So the first assumption, I have certain physicality or certain things I bring to the table. And that's all you have in the beginning. So you come to class and you think, based on this, I can do X. And then when you find out you can't, Y. And now you make your next assumption. And for some people, that assumption is, I'm not strong enough. I need to work out more. No, you need to do more of these reps. Well, if I need to do more of these reps and I can't work out, guess I got to take steroids and cheat on the reps on this thing. Whatever the case. And I'm exaggerating a lot here, but you'll find people that will cut corners on their recovery, on their training, on their exercise and physique. They'll cut corners on something to make something else be a little bit easier. The thing I've learned is the people who cut corners are already mentally weak. So the reason why I've never used steroids is because I'm not mentally weak. I'm physically weak. There's a difference. The people who are doing TRT, HGH, some kind of major steroid, I think of those people as already losing to me, because you had to rely on this thing to just step on the mats. I didn't.
Yeah, they broke their mental before they even did anything.
People that don't learn to defend themselves early, they think they just need to insulate their joints more with muscle. So the easy thing is, well, you can't extend my arm if I can curl your body. Let me just do all the vitamin S, right? Do all the steroids. No, you're weak. Instead of figuring out the way to fight out of that move better, technically, you just got stronger. I don't care how many steroids you take. Eventually, your age and your metabolism catch up and it won't help you anymore. So, do you want to be the person who has all kinds of physical ailments because of rampant steroid use in your prime? Or do you want to be that person that had a healthy lifestyle, might have lost a little bit more, didn't really compete at the highest physical level you were capable of at the time, but you learned the skills, and now you have a desire that wasn't corrupted. You didn't take any shortcuts. You have a mental toughness you built up, and you did it the long way, and you accumulated skills. You now have something in your back pocket that you can do for the rest of your life at least the hobby level, and have fun with it and not feel like you're just getting smashed every time a new 20-year-old walks in. And you come away from it knowing you have that fulfillment because you did it the right way. It's kind of hard to be proud of something that you know you got the shortcut on. Are there people that do it? Yeah. I don't lose sleep over fake people.
At that point, you don't need to judge them. There's no point in judging. It's just a waste of your time.
Yeah. I'd rather most of my students have what I call the rattlesnake effect. I'd rather you never have to use your jiu-jitsu, never have to use your Muay Thai, never have to use your Kali. If you can just have a good enough posture and let people know you mean business, maybe they don't want any of that business. Because the last I checked, it is not the Eastern Diamondback rattlesnake, aka the largest venomous land snake in North America, that has the most human kills. It isn't. It's funny how the copperhead and the cottonmouth, between the two of them, they are way more likely to give you the business than an eastern diamondback rattlesnake. And the reason being, one of those things will warn you ahead of time and the other won't. And so we think we need to conceal carry our jiu-jitsu, and it's actually better to open carry it, because in the grand scheme of things, the average person who would do a violent crime is looking to do it against a soft target. They don't want to pick a hard target, because predators by their nature prey on the weak. A wolf could take out any sheep it wants. Why is it going to go for the weak one? Because it's the easier prey. Because at our core, human beings are also two things: creatures of habit and lazy by nature. Just going back to what we said before about that default. So finding a way to get out of your comfort zone and going into a thing that is notoriously rigorous and hard, kudos to that person already. You don't need to compete. You stepping through those doors is already a huge win. We talk about the biggest advancement you can make in terms of rank is putting on the white belt. Putting on the white belt is your biggest promotion in jiu-jitsu. You stopped eating potato chips on the couch, you got up, and you went and got your butt kicked. That is the biggest promotion you'll get. Now, along the way, those other things are going to feel really good, but it all started with, did you start and put on the initial effort to go in, right? Now, being in that rattlesnake, you say to yourself, hey, I had this capability, leave me alone. And most of the time they will. So if anybody's listening and you're thinking, hey, you're a guy speaking from the perspective of a guy a lot, I am a woman, I have different fears, I have different things. Let me say this. The same things are true and they still apply. If you are distracted going through a parking lot and you are looking through a bag, a purse, your coat for your keys, and your head isn't up and your eyes aren't on a swivel looking around, your likelihood of getting attacked are high. Just because you are distracted, you are weak positionally. I don't care if you can do like a 48-inch box jump and you're a CrossFit phenom and you can do like the Murph in like 40 minutes. You can be all those things and still be a victim because in the circumstance, you were unaware, unprepared. Now, the same thing is true with regards to a survey was taken from a bunch of aggravated assaults and sexual assaults in some of the biggest penal institutions in America. And they were asking these violent crime offenders what was a common trait they were looking for with their victims. And one of the most common traits was either long hair or hair that's done in a ponytail, because a common theme was grabbing it to control posture.
Yeah, because the head controls the spine, spine controls the body.
Yeah. For someone to grab me there and use that against me, hey, let's go back to Nogi. It's so realistic. Yeah, once again, hair grabbies exist. But learning to, mitigate certain risks by saying, hey, when I'm getting ready to go outside, if I know I am alone and on my own, I'm going to tuck my hair into my coat or into my shirt or into something so that it's not as accessible of a handle or a grip. Or I'll put it up and put it under a hat or a hood over that. Does that mean that they can't do something to break my posture from behind? Would a shoulder grip work just as well? It could work, but as well? No, you're mitigating risk. You can't make anything get to zero without, just complete isolation and never going outside. But if you're going to do that, you need to think about where are the biggest linchpin, like critical vulnerability points to doing that. Being distracted, texting on your phone, walking between the cars, as opposed to walking down the lanes of cars, you're limiting your visibility. You're focusing to a small point. Why would you do that? At the same time, if I were in a grappling tournament and I'm limiting my focus, I'm saying, I only want to grab your lapel. I'm probably going to lose to you grabbing my knee. Like, you're doing the same thing that's in this bigger example over here where we're talking about a violent crime, but you're making this similar problem here because you're just fixated on something as if there's no threat anywhere else. I tell people the best thing you can do is just have an overarching awareness to the whole picture. Like, there are a few matches where you'll see me looking at the referee and kind of giving them the nonverbal nod of like, get out of my way. Because I know where the match is going, but that referee doesn't even know. Now, if that was a fight in a parking lot, knowing like where the cars are, knowing where the curb is, knowing like the situation is huge.